Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Kristi.
Hey friends, it's Kristi, your credit coach. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today, let's talk about bankruptcy. There's a lot of people out there that feel strangled by debt, and sometimes they feel like bankruptcy is the only option. And in some cases, it is. But let's talk about what bankruptcy is, what it isn't, and just get a better understanding about it. So there are 3 types of bankruptcies out there. There are 2 that fall under personal and 1 that falls under business. So business is a Chapter 11, and that is a business reorganization plan. There's a trustee appointed by the courts, and the intention and the efforts are put forth to help that business stay in business, pay their creditors, and continue on as a business. A Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13 are personal types of bankruptcies. So the most common type of bankruptcy is a Chapter 7. It's just over 62% of the bankruptcies that are filed in the United States. So on a Chapter 7, there's no repayments of debts that fit into the guidelines of the bankruptcy. So it's where you have to liquidate some of your assets, your non-exempt assets, to pay back those creditors, and then whatever is remaining, they essentially erase. Now, I'd mentioned non-exempt. If you are living in a home that you own, you can exclude that from having to be liquidated. So in other words, the bankruptcy system doesn't force you out of a home that you own. A Chapter 13, which makes up about 37% of the bankruptcies filed each year, it's a way to restructure payments to your creditors, and it's over a 3-year or a 5-year plan. So it doesn't make your debts go away, but it does restructure your payments. The Chapter 13 is the most gentle bankruptcy when it comes to your credit. Now, according to uscourts.gov, in 2019, there were just about 775,000 cases of bankruptcies filed in the US. There was actually a really big decrease in 2020 with only 544,463 cases. So the bankruptcy filings were down nearly 30% at 29.7%. But in 2020, Chapter 11, which is business bankruptcies, those filings increased by 18.7%. So they went from 2019's number of 7,020 to 8,333 filings in 2020, which is really not a shock if we think about how many businesses were negatively impacted during COVID in 2020. So I'm not going to spend any more time talking about a Chapter 11 or business bankruptcies. I really just want to spend a few minutes talking about the personal bankruptcies. We can say it this way: it's the only legal way to get out of paying debts and obligations. But not everything can be included inside of a bankruptcy. Federally backed student loans, which makes up about 80% of the student loans that are out there, they cannot be included in a bankruptcy, nor can taxes to the IRS. So if you are considering bankruptcy because of either of those debts owed, just know that that cannot be included in a bankruptcy. And while I'm not an attorney, I do know several really amazing bankruptcy attorneys. So if this is something that you are considering, reach out to me at questions@creditkristi.com and I can make an introduction to an amazing bankruptcy attorney. So a bankruptcy could really have a pretty big stigma about it. It's not something anybody chooses to have or desires to have, but a bankruptcy does not mean a mismanagement of money. It doesn't mean you're bad at credit. For many people, it's because of unforeseen life events that they cannot find any other option but a bankruptcy to help them get out from strangling debt. For some people, it's being unprepared. Maybe there was a lack of savings when an emergency happened. Sometimes it's being underinsured or no insurance. I know of many people who had no health insurance or really terrible health insurance and wound up with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical debt. I know of some people that were underinsured for their automobile insurance and got in a really bad car accident, and some of those medical obligations were not covered. And I knew of a young family who was renting a home. They had a fire and didn't have renter's insurance and literally lost everything. So there's all sorts of reasons why somebody might find themselves facing bankruptcy as a potential option to help them get out of debt. So the reason I'm bringing this to you today is because I know that there are some listeners that are really teetering on, do I try another debt consolidation loan? Do I just say forget about it and just have them come after me? Or do I talk to a bankruptcy attorney? And if that's you, I want you to know you are not alone, and sometimes having that clean slate to get out from underneath it all, whatever it is that you're dealing with, can provide you with a new opportunity, a way to see life differently, and to experience every day a little bit differently. There is such a burden when we are riddled with debt, and if you cannot see your way out, talk to a bankruptcy attorney and just see if it's the right plan for you. A few things though that I do want to make sure I share with you today, since credit and mortgages are so near and dear to my heart, there is an implication, obviously, on your credit report when you experience a bankruptcy. So a Chapter 13 is going to remain on your credit report for up to 7 years, and a Chapter 7 is going to remain on your credit report for up to 10 years. So obviously, the older that becomes, the less impact it has. So once a bankruptcy is reported onto your credit report, it falls underneath the category of public records. This is where any derogatory event is going to go. So if there's a judgment held against you, a foreclosure, a short sale, or a bankruptcy, it's going to be under this category. It's a different category from your regular trade lines, those items that you're paying on time every single month, and it's separate from any collection accounts that show up as well. So when there is a public record of a derogatory event, unfortunately, this hits your credit profile the hardest. So if you've got a really great credit score prior to this, you're likely going to fall several hundred points. If your credit score was already suffering before a bankruptcy is reported, it may not fall as much as if you had excellent credit, but it will really wind up keeping your credit scores lower until that is eventually removed off of your credit report in many years to come. And there's a lot of people that have misconceptions about how long they have to wait in order to get approved for a mortgage loan after a bankruptcy. For most people out there, you'll either fall into a conventional mortgage or an FHA mortgage loan, but you may qualify for an FHA loan with as little as 2 years after that discharge date. The discharge date is when your bankruptcy was complete. So it has gone through the court process, everything's been filed, a judge signed off, and now your bankruptcy is complete. Even though it's a discharge date, it's actually a good date because that starts the clock for moving forward to your next chapter. So you can get a new mortgage loan with as little as 2 years after a bankruptcy. If you're going with a conventional mortgage, the waiting period is 4 years after your bankruptcy discharge date. There are a lot of people that think that they have to wait 10 years until it's off of their credit, and I want to make sure you know you do not have to wait that long. A few tips I'd like to share with you if this is you or if this is something you're considering. It's really important to show your ability to rebuild credit properly after a bankruptcy. So once your bankruptcy discharge date is complete, you'll want to start reestablishing your credit profile. You'll likely want to start with a secured credit card. That means it's your money that you're borrowing against, and that credit card company is reporting it every single month and showing your ability to borrow money and pay it back on time. So always remember to keep your balance at 30% or below of your limit available. Even if it's your money, if you borrow more than 30%, it can look like an overutilization of credit. And don't be in a huge hurry to go out and start all sorts of new lines of credit. We only need a couple lines of credit and to show that you're borrowing and you're paying back on time every month. The last thing you want to have happen is to miss a payment or be late on a payment. Your payment history makes up 35% of that algorithm of your credit score. But even more importantly, if you go to apply for a mortgage loan or an auto loan or something big in your future, you want to make sure that that person that's making the decision of offering you or extending to you a line of credit or approving a loan sees that you have reestablished your credit profile properly, that you are maintaining on-time payments, and that you're not getting too far in debt, that you are a risk for them. I met with a family last year who wanted to apply for a mortgage loan, and she knew she was a few years post bankruptcy, but she couldn't remember the date. So I logged onto the system where where I can pull that information. And unfortunately, that was their third bankruptcy over the last 21 years. Every 7 years, they had a new Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I share this with you because although there are those unforeseen life events, or there's the underinsured, there's also some behaviors and some habits that need to be reworked, and it's so important to create new ways of spending, new ways of handling your money, so you don't find yourself in that situation. If an underwriter were to look at that file and see 3 bankruptcies every 7 years happening, there's a really good chance that that underwriter would not feel comfortable approving a mortgage loan, because they're showing their behaviors and their attitude towards money puts them in that category of being a high-risk applicant. So I spent a lot of time helping to coach that couple to learn a new way of working with their money so they won't find themselves in that situation again. So my goal today was really just to give an overview, because I think bankruptcy has such a bad stigma, but in some cases it's just impossible to find a way to dig out from underneath tens of thousands of dollars in medical debt or whatever kind of debt you might be facing. If you find yourself buried in debt because of decisions and actions that you find yourself making when it comes to money, it's time to evaluate your beliefs about money. We all have a core story when it comes to money. We learn this as a child from our parents or our caretakers and in our environment, and we have lived into this core story our entire lives. And if you can get to the root of your core story and understand what you actually believe to be true about money, you might find you've been living into a lie your whole life. I talk about money mindset on my YouTube channel at Kristi, and I invite you to spend some time over there. And for those of you that are interested in creating a new relationship when it comes to money, check out my course called the Prosperity Guide Map, and you can find that on my website at creditchristi.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, email me at questions@creditchristi.com, and who knows, I might just turn your question into an episode. Thanks so much for being here with me, my friends, and until next time, stay well.
Subscribe now and share with a friend to stay in the loop for new credit content and insider tips to maximize your credit knowledge. And follow Credit Kristi on Instagram.